Hey everyone, this is Lee from Stoneside. Today I want to talk about eco homes. Now, if you're starting from scratch and you're building a new home, you might be able to make a true eco home, but if you're starting with a home that you're already living in, that true eco home probably isn't within your reach because there's a very specific definition for what an eco home is. But there are a ton of ways that you can start moving towards more eco-friendly practices if that's something that you're interested in. Now, I'm going to preface this with the fact that I am obviously not an environmental scientist, but as a consumer, if I was trying to do this, these are some of the things I would think about, and I really encourage you to do your own research as well. So let's start off with the basic definition of what an eco home is. According to the internet, an eco home is one that uses materials and technology to decrease their carbon footprint and increase their energy efficiency. So the true eco home has a very specific orientation to the sun. They use basic insulation materials, they have very fancy windows, and all these sorts of things. So again, if you're starting with a home that you already own, then you probably can't change its orientation to the sun because it's a fixed structure. The term carbon footprint gets thrown around a lot, and there's a ton of minutia that goes into that definition, but at its essence, it's really just the rate of carbon dioxide emissions per individual. So why do we care about carbon dioxide? Well, it's a measure of the concentration of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. And why do they call them greenhouse gases? Well, think of an actual greenhouse. So heat comes in, sunlight comes in, and it tries to come back out, but since it's heat now instead of solar energy, it can't escape that greenhouse layer. So if there's more greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, when the sun brings its energy into our atmosphere, it does its thing, it turns into heat, it can't escape back out, making things a bit warmer. So for the environmentalists, this is a very important fact. We want to decrease our carbon dioxide emissions per person, so doing your part, so that we can try to control our greenhouse gas layer. So getting back to that eco home, we're going to assume that you already have a home, you're not building from scratch, and we're going to talk about some basic things that you can do to increase your eco home-ness. So one of those things is you can think about switching to solar energy. So as a consumer, I always think, okay, solar panels are excellent, you know, we're decreasing our fossil fuel use, but are there any externalities that I'm not thinking of? So when I say externalities, there are positive ones, like we're not using fossil fuels, but there can also be negative ones. So for example, the steel industry in Pittsburgh was great for the economy at the time. We produced lots of steel, but all that coal ended up really having a detriment to the city. So that's a negative externality. So I don't know for sure about the ins and outs of solar panel manufacturing, but that's something I would ask myself. You know, we're having decrease in fossil fuel use, but how's the manufacturing process of the solar panels? Is it super clean? Is it energy efficient? Anyway, that's just something that I think about, is what's hiding under the hood there. And to be clear, I am super for solar energy. I think it's great. I just think that everything that we need to think about should be a calculation. Electric cars are actually a really great example of this. So electric cars, again, great, no fossil fuels. But if you live in a state where all of your electricity is produced by fossil fuels, so coal for example, then by charging your electric car, you're still using those fossil fuels. But if you live in a place that uses lots of solar energy to create electricity or wind energy, then you're really not using fossil fuels anymore if you have an electric car. These are obviously really big ticket items. You know, solar panels are really expensive still for residential use, and electric cars are definitely a little pricier. You know, you're gonna go out and get yourself a nice Tesla that's gonna cost you a few doubloons. But there are a bunch of other smaller effort items that you can do in your home. So unless you have a kiddo that loves to flush toys down the toilet, a low flow toilet ends up using less water. So that's an eco-friendly option. Another option would be to think about your window coverings. There are a few products that are really nice and eco-friendly while still giving you a ton of functionality. One of those products is solar shades. So I have a solar shade swatch here, and as you can see, there are pockets of air in between the spaces of the fabric. And in this particular swatch, there is also, if you can see that, the inside is metallic. So not only is the solar shade holding on to whatever temperature of air is against your window, so if it's summer, it's going to make sure that that hot air doesn't enter your room, and if it's winter, it's going to insulate your home against the cold. So again, not only holding on to that air, but the metallic inners really make sure that it's ultra efficient at doing its job. Another great option is solar shades. So solar shades let in varying amounts of light depending on which openness factor you choose. So I've got my handy dandy little guide here. As you can see, we have some different openness factors. And now I'm going to get my cell phone out to show you what the sun looks like behind each. So, as you can see, the 1% openness is the most dim, so letting the least amount of light come through. Now we move to 3% and 5%. And you can see it's similar with the dark colored fabrics. Another really cool innovation is called eScreen, and eScreen has something called Cool Black on the back side of that fabric, so the fabric facing the window. So even though this is a black fabric, the back side of it has a special coating. So even though this is a dark fabric, the fabric itself does not get warm. So again, helping to insulate your home against whatever sun exposure you're getting. And finally, both of these products can be motorized. So that means you can control them with your phone, a wall mount remote, or a handheld remote. And the great thing about this is you can choose to use batteries, you can hardwire them into your electricity of your home, or again, that eco vibe, you can use solar packs. So solar packs use the sun to charge a battery, so there is still a battery, but you're not using electricity directly to do so. I hope you enjoyed this cursory glance into eco homes. For more design ideas, visit our idea gallery on www.stoneside.com.